It's not cumulative. Cumulative. You don't get 1.5 non-voted, and then on top of that, voted for general purposes of 2.5, and another 2.5 on top of that voted for parks, open space, civic center, and community center purposes. And then another 2.5 on top of that, even though it's not used anymore because of the Safeco effect for utility, it was such that you're leveraged at 9%.
Yeah, and
you can't. It's not cumulative.
Well, right now, so really, right now, when you look at your realistic total remaining debt capacity, it's about 62 million, not 97 million, because what we do is we subtract out the utility purpose category. Okay. And of that 62 million, 34 million would be used for parks, open space, civic center, et cetera. And then 28.5 is for the general purpose.
I got you.
Without a vote, then your maximum non-voted bond would be 16 million.
Gotcha.
Now, if you took on a $16 million non-voted bond and we brought that down below, then that would mean with your current AV, that would drop your basically would drop your voted debt capacity down only to 12 million. So we take the 28 minus 16. Does that make sense? So page 6 shows your, basically an example of a voted bond. And if we look at your current 2010 assessed valuation of $1,371,000,000, currently a $4 million bond financed over 20 years, and I think to be conservative, we estimated the interest rate a little bit high. I think it's really more like a 373 or so, but we'll just call it 383 for now. That means that when you take that annual payment divided over the assessed valuation on a per thousand basis, that would be 21 cents per thousand. And so that's a very reasonable number. We like to see 35 cents or less, especially in the economy that we're in. Just keep that in mind. If it's a $2 million voted bond, then you'd be looking at about 10 cents per thousand. The monthly cost would be about $2.19 compared to $4.38. So if you're thinking about a voted bond, then if you're thinking about a $6 million issue, then just take 3 times 10 cents. You're at about 31 cents, and that monthly cost then would be about $6.59. And if you're interested in a voted bond, let me know, because I can send you all sorts of information on voter education, the timeline. We typically suggest that you start out at least 12 months prior to the ballot date with voter education. Page 7 shows examples of estimated payments for revenue bonds. And again, showing $1.5 million and $2 million. We just focus on the 20-year scenarios. You can see that a $1.5 million water and sewer revenue bond has an average annual payment of $109,000. The average interest rate is about 3.93%. So just slightly higher than a tax-backed bond, general obligation bond. You can see for a 20-year, $2 million bond, that you would be looking at an average annual payment of about $145,000 per year. And so a calculation for the finance department would then be to look at the gross revenues of the system less the operating costs. That equals net revenues. So net revenues have to cover the bond payments by a certain factor. And that's that minimum of 125%. And we're suggesting that you focus in on 200% to get the lowest interest cost and the highest rating grade.
These are amortized payments, interest on?
Those are amortized.
Okay.
Yeah, principal and interest. One thing to keep in mind is on page 8, there has been a new product that has come into the market for municipalities. It's known as the Build America Bond option, and this came out of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. The program is just barely a year old, and basically, a municipality has the option to consider the Build America bond. You issue the bonds at a higher interest rate that's taxable, but then the federal government will reimburse you 35% of the interest cost. And so we're seeing that on average, it can lower your borrowing rate by about 0.30%, what we call 30 basis points. So just over a quarter of a percentage point. There are some risks there. Recently in the news, they've talked about likely audits by the IRS. If you owe money to the IRS, then they'll intercept the payments. So it's one of those programs that I just wanted to make you aware of. I'm not necessarily, proposing it or putting it down, but I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of this option, and it's something to think about. The key, though, and this is another positive for the city, the key is that you really need to have an underlying rating grade of A+ or higher to get the benefit of the Build America Bond program. And the whole issue there is it deals with stimulating the economy, trying to help the economy recover, and also it opens up a new network of potential investors, such as the foreign investors, pension funds, taxable asset managers, hedge funds. Some question whether this might be the beginning indications that eventually Congress will eliminate tax exemption for municipalities. I think that remains to be seen. But then others question whether this Build America Bond program will be in existence after this year, because it expires on December 31st, 2010.
What does that mean, the tax exemption for municipalities?
Well, the tax exemption, really, the benefit is to the municipality and to the investors. So as a municipality, you achieve a lower interest rate. As an investor, the investor doesn't have to pay taxes on that investment income. Whereas now, if you go with the Build America bond, you're paying a higher interest rate initially, but you're not paying a higher net investment interest rate because you have that 35% subsidy that you're getting.
But it's taxable to the investor.
Right, that's taxable to the investor.
So
that's really the key difference, is that this Build America bond opens it up to other investors.
Right.
And I think Congress looks at it that they have lost, hundreds of millions of dollars by providing municipalities this benefit. And so the 35% subsidy, I think, reduces. Yeah, that's right, yeah. So I mean, again, it's all speculation, but I'm just kind of sharing with you some of the things that are in our trade journal, The Bond Buyer.
It'd be like taking away the mortgage interest exemption.
Exactly.
It's an institutionalized
Yeah,
subsidy, if you would.
Yep.
That's been around for decades.
yeah. And personally, I don't think they'll touch tax exemption, but, and I think, I would guess they'll continue with the Build America Bond program, but they'll probably ratchet down and reduce that subsidy, maybe to drop it from 35% to, say, 33 or 30%. If you issue the Build America bonds before December 31st, 2010, then you should receive that 35% subsidy for the life of the bonds.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say,